There have been rumors swarming around the web as of late in relation to Mortal Kombat 1, with the fact that I guess Ghostface from Scream is supposed to be making his way onto MK1 as a DLC character. And there are people who are thrilled about it, but there are people who are just kind of like confused because at this point it seems like NetherRealm Studios, Warner Brothers Game, they're doing everything they can to make this title appealing to the public. Because let's be real, Mortal Kombat 1 or MK1 as people might call it, it's not nearly as popular as MK11, MK10, some of the previous entries. Because you look at MK1, a lot of people think it's overrated. I mean, you play the game, right? Like, for example, like the dialogue, during the versus modes, it's not as edgy, and it's not as memorable as what we got in MK10 or MK11 or anything like that. And the back and forth dialogue was one of the main features that added to the appeals of some of the latest MK games prior to MK1. Because you look at DLC characters that we have so far, we already have Homelander, Omni Man, Peacemaker, and yeah, they're from like different universes and all. But I feel like this is being done to try and like boost the sales and the level of popularity of MK1. Because on one hand, this was a game that people were stoked about, but then on the other hand, it's a game that fell below a lot of people's expectations. Because while it's true that 2023 was a very competitive year in terms of gaming, it should also be noticed that when it comes down to high profile fighting games, um, MK1 had a chance to stand out because the only real competition they had was Street Fighter 6. And obviously, a lot of people are looking at Street Fighter 6 as the best fighting game of 2023, and rightfully so. I feel like if MK1 was released this year in 2024, it probably would have stood out more. But then again, it could have gotten overshadowed by Tekken 8. Who knows? But adding Ghostface from Scream to MK1 is very interesting, and I'm not exactly sure whether or not it's going to necessarily do anything. Because like the thing about MK1 that really stands out, it's the best, is that it's just as bloody and gory and as violent as ever. But then you look at some of the older games like MK10 and 11. Some people will say that the aesthetics are better overall, but with MK1, it seems like the gameplay is better overall, and it should be because it's a brand new installment. So that's something that kind of makes sense. Ghostface being in this game doesn't make any sense to a lot of people, but at the same time, I do think it's going to be interesting if he is, because I don't think he's been officially confirmed. But obviously, Warner Brothers Games and NetherRealm Studios, they want to include a horror legend in this game. Because MK1 is supposed to be M rated and it's for adults, but at the same time, it seems like a lot of the dialogue is pretty, it just feels very wholesome compared to what we got in MK11, MK10, and I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. But yeah, I do feel that that Ghostface is a character that a lot of people know. He's been around since the mid '90s when the Scream series started, and a lot of people go on record and say that the Scream series has basically went off a cliff in terms of popularity after like the second or third movie. I saw Scream 5, which came out like 2 years ago or something like that. It honestly wasn't that bad, but I don't think it was as good as the ones from the '90s. And and yeah, I do feel like Ghostface would definitely add some star power to this game, because I feel like the characters in this game are watered down to some extent. Because I've actually like read all kinds of things about the characters having limited moves, and that there were certain characters who were just like omitted from the game like altogether. And when I mean omitted, they weren't playable, like Cyrax, Cabal, Jax, Sector. They were not playable, and that's something that's kind of an issue. A lot of people feel like the story mode was kind of just, could have been a lot better. Um, and I don't know. I mean, the game has managed to sell like around 3 mil since its release, and I think that was something that was reported back in January of 2024. Hell, even sooner than that. And that's kind of shocking because Mortal Kombat is like, one of the most popular video game franchises of all time. And you look at like MK11, that game came out back in 2019, and the amount of sales that that game got was unbelievable. And it's hard to believe um, that MK1 has managed to do Final Fantasy 16 numbers in relation to sales, because you look at MK11, that's a game that's sold like 50 million copies since its release. But then again, that was something that was reported like 2 years ago. So it took that game like 3 or 4 years to kind of get to that point. And who knows, that might end up being the case with MK1, but I highly doubt it, because even though like a lot of people felt like Chronica as the main villain, MK11 was kind of just whatever. It was ridiculous because she was overrated. She can wind back time. I remember it being a big deal when it came out. And the voice acting was on point. The dialogue was awesome. The story was compelling. Um, for the most part, MK11 is just like unmatched. Some people feel like it's is overrated, but the numbers don't lie in relation to sales figures. Some people think that MK9 and 10 were better, but everybody has their own respective opinion on this matter. But honestly, Ghostface coming to MK1 could be a good thing. I'm not exactly sure whether or not it's going to have a significant effect on sales or anything like that, but we'll just have to wait and see.